So, welcome everybody to the Legacy Life podcast. I am so excited to have Perry here today, who has written a book and has started a movement actually to help people break the silence around sexual abuse. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to have you on. Thank you, Perry, for being here today.
Sarah, thank you for asking me to come on because uh, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a video, whether it's a post, if somebody's given me the platform to share this message and one person who's living in silence hears it and it changes the trajectory of the path that they now are going to embark on,
Mm.
you can't even put that into words. You really can't put it into words on what that feels like and what the outcome of that is going to be. So, other than thank you. So, I appreciate it, Sarah.
Yay! I am so excited that you're here because, just like you said, every single heartbeat, every person that this touches, there's the potential for this message or just one thing from this
Mm.
conversation that could help somebody to change the trajectory of somebody's life. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. Um, so before we get into that, I just wanted to have a little, just let people know that my intention with this podcast is really to connect with people, to share more and more stories like yours, where people are sharing, what their legacy life looks like, what impact do they want to have on the world, what message do you have that can touch somebody else's life and help them transform that. So what would you say, Perry, your legacy is that you're wanting to give to the world, leave with the world?
That two things that what you've been through, whether it is some form of abuse or trauma, that the shame that you're carrying doesn't need to be there anymore. There should be no shame, there should be no fear, there should be no guilt, and there should be no blame, i.e., blaming the person that's in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happened, the abuse that you went, like, for example, for me, the abuse that I went through wasn't my fault. And if you're listening, if you went through abuse, especially sexual abuse, it wasn't your fault. So this burden that you're carrying because you're living in silence with it, you don't need to do that any longer. And in regards to breaking the silence, what I want to leave behind is just this. You mentioned at the beginning about this movement, right? And it's just this movement, this wave all over the world of just these people just living in their truest form without feeling like they can't be who they are because of what people are going to say, think, or feel as a response to what they are wanting to share. I lived in silence for 12 years because of I was fearing what other people would say, how they would react. And not only that, I also lived in silence because I didn't want to confront my own demons and face my own story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think but as soon as I pushed through and I'd done that and then I saw the world, I was like, Jesus, I was like, what I've been perceiving, they say that the external world is just a reflection of your internal world.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just living with this internal world of these pitchforks of people that are going to burn me and they're going to point fingers, they're going to laugh, but none of that was true. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just to create this wave of people constantly breaking their silence. And here's the thing, right? If people can break their silence like constantly and just see it all over the world, I truly, truly believe that the cases of sexual abuse will decrease
Yeah.
because the people that want to do it, right, they will be in fear that they won't get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
They will be in fear that they shouldn't do that and they'll think twice. And I truly believe that the cases will go down with the more silences that are broken.
Yeah, I'm sure. I can I can really align with that. Yeah. Yeah, because you know, it's the silence that gives the whole situation power, isn't it? You know?
Given the yeah, you're if you're staying silent, you're given the power to the abuser, you know, and of course he's going to do it again to you or do it again to other people. And I'll highlight this in the podcast with my story, why that's so evident and why I can relate to that. Because if you live in silence, then they think they can get away with it and just carry it on. But the more silences that are broken, they can't get away with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, that, you know, you talked about the shame, you know, the shame of, you know, speaking up, or what might happen, or what people might think, or yeah, how people might view you as well. And you know, I mean, I didn't experience what you have experienced, you know, as a child. But you know, I did have an incident with myself when I was I can't remember how old I was, 14 or something like that, when somebody that I trusted, somebody that I trusted who was you know, kind of violated my trust, really. And so it was somebody who I was I did a lot of theatre and stuff when I was younger, and I was doing like a performance thing, and this person was walking me home from an event, basically, and pounced on me, basically, but didn't rape me, but did stuff and then stopped, basically, because I was not responding. I was not into what was going on. And what was interesting, and I think where some of the shame can come from, is that I was really shocked. And, you know, our bodies go into fight, flight, or freeze. And I think so much shame comes from that freeze thing, right?
Why do you think that?
Yeah, because a lot of people think, oh, you will, and I thought, well, I would just push them off. I would just fight. I would just shout, and I was absolutely frozen. I almost had like an out of body kind of experience, and was not able to do anything. And then he just stopped and then walked me home like nothing had happened. And it was just like, whoa. And I've never spoken about that with anybody. I've never told anybody about that. And I didn't speak to my parents about it. And oh no, that's not true. I told one friend. I did tell one friend. So I did break the silence. I told one friend. But I didn't tell any adults about it. Because this was somebody who was was in a position of power, who I trusted, who was supposed to be there to look after me. And I felt safe. This was the other thing. I felt safe because they were married. You know, I thought, if you're married, then married people don't do that kind of thing, right? It's what I thought. So I felt I was safe. I could be me. I could be all of who I was. And also, you know, talking to the shame piece, I think I was probably very, very attractive because I'd been performing, I'd been fully expressing myself. I was being all of who I am. And I was radiating. And then, you know, obviously that was attractive, but that you know, that's mine. That's not for anybody to take or to, you know, without an invitation, right? So
did you carry on performing after that? What happened after?
Yeah, I did, but I just didn't have anything to do with him. I just was like, you're not safe. I don't trust you. I don't want to have anything to do with you. And so, and he knew he'd broken, he'd broken our relationship, right? Yeah. And he knew, and I think he was worried. His wife was he was visiting the town where I lived as part of a festival. And I think he was probably worried that I'd say something to his wife, actually, or say something, but, you know, I didn't. And maybe I would have, had he raped me, maybe I would have, you know, but he did stop, but it was, one of the things I realized years later was that affected my sexual relationships as well, because that what happened there, and I'm sure other people have had this experience where that the trauma of what happened in that incident gets triggered every time you're in that situation or somebody touches you, whatever. And so I and I was like, well, why does that happen? And I realized, oh, it links back to that incident, that it just got replayed and replayed and replayed over and over and over again. And of course, that adds power to it, doesn't it? It kind of feeds that monster, that cycle in your body, And I do very much believe that our bodies hold trauma, and I've experienced it myself, that hold trauma in our bodies and in our DNA. And so that has to be healed, not just mentally, but physically, energetically, spiritually, and all the different levels,
Yeah. I agree. We were talking earlier, weren't we, about body keeps a score.
Yeah.
And, there's different things, right? Like for you had triggers. So somebody would make a move on you, like a man romantically, and then it would trigger. To begin with, you didn't know why, but then you started to connect the dots. And then for other people, you could still call them triggers, I guess.
Yeah.
But I talk about it extensively in regards to coping mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
Like my dad became an alcoholic 3 years prior to his death. He wasn't always an alcoholic, but 3 years prior to his death, he started to pick up the bottle more. And he started to drink more. The weekend turned to day drinking. Then the at-home drinking turned to in the car drinking. And then he then got diabetes in the January. 4 months later, he died from a heart attack. It was a domino effect. But it was like, I remember texting him. The last time I saw him, came around to my house. He was drunk and he just had an argument with my mum at home. And then he then left. And then I texted him saying, "Why are you drinking so much?" Because it was becoming a lot. And then he texted me back saying to fight away the demons. I remember at the time, I didn't know he was sexually abused. And at the time, I was like, well, what demons is he? I mean, he got fired from his job. We think he was drinking on a job, me and mum, and that is why he's fired. But dad never told us why. And then when he got fired from the job, this whole masculinity, because he wasn't the breadwinner of the family, he wasn't the man of the family anymore because he was out of a job and he was just at home. It was just stacking the amount of in his head, the amount of negatives in the world were just stacking and stacking and stacking, drinking, and his coping mechanism was alcohol.
Yeah.
And I think, and for a lot of people, was why there's AA meetings, is why a lot of this happens, why people turn to drugs and why they turn to alcohol when they're living in silence, because they're not talking to anybody. So if you're not talking to anybody about what you went through, who do you have to talk to? Yourself. You ask the questions in your own head, and who responds back? Usually the demons that are living in that head, and they put a light on this that you should be ashamed for what you went through. You are to blame for what you went through. You are to blame for not speaking out. You are to blame for not telling his wife Sarah, right? That is your fault because he could have done it to somebody else. And then you start to say all these things in your head, right? But then it's like, that's not good for anyone. But as soon as you break that silence and you get a positive response from somebody and like, Sarah, it's okay. Like, it wasn't your fault. And you're like, oh, okay. Because somebody else is feeding the truth, which you weren't allowing in your head, because those demons won't tell you the truth, will they?
No. And I think it stops us shining our light as well, when because it doesn't feel safe, like what I've just in sharing that with you as well, it's made me realize why often as women it can be hard to, and probably as men as well, to step into all of who you are, be all of who you are, to be fully self-expressed, because it's not safe. Because actually when you do that, like a time when I did that, when I was really fully in my self-expression, I got negative attention, right, that I didn't want. So there's that as well, isn't there?
Yeah, which I know you're all about in regards to like, if a woman wants to wear high heels, doesn't mean she wants to have sex with you tonight, right?
Yeah,
She wants to wear high heels. If she wants to wear a short skirt, she wants to wear a short skirt. She wants to cut her hair off. Doesn't mean she's now a man or she's a lesbian, for
yeah,
example. You
yeah.
know, and I know that's very much what you're about, and I couldn't agree more. Like you, when you were radiating, you talking about how you was obviously attractive. You're radiating this energy. You were open,
Mhm,
which to some men like that person, they're like, okay, well, she's open and she's inviting me, of course, some narcissistic behavior. Well, of course, she's going to invite me in if she's being open. And then as soon as you're like, no, that's not what I meant,
mhm.
it's almost as if it's like a shocker to those people,
Yeah,
oh, you whore, why are you like, and it's just, I don't know. It's a very interesting world in that regards in what we live in. But I think with your message, with your podcast, with what you're about, with many people like us and many people joining and standing right by us, I'm hoping that it goes on a decline, you know?
absolutely. And I love, 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 love what you're doing. And I know in our conversation a bit earlier, you talked about maybe starting your own podcast. So I
Yeah.
hope you do that, because you've got this amazing book. And yeah, I'll just ask you about that in a moment so you can tell people about your book. You've got this amazing book. I think having, telling these stories, um, we've got similar backgrounds in that I was a professional actor for many, many years before I really focused in on coaching.
Hmm.
And that was my background. And when our first child was stillborn, and our parenting journey started in that really difficult way, one of the things we wanted, the legacy from our first child's birth and from us becoming parents in that way, we wanted to make a difference. And we do, both my husband and I have a dream of creating a charity, actually, um, to yeah. So that's one of the things that we will do.
Yeah.
And we got some funding and did a story capture project with families who had experienced baby loss, basically. And again, it ties in with what you're doing. That was about breaking the silence. It was about telling your story. It was about healing from that trauma,
Yeah.
healing from that experience, and had some beautiful stories out of that. And I know in your book, you were saying earlier about at the end of your book that you've got a place, ideas for how people can express like what breaking the silence can be. And
Yeah.
in that project, we were doing poetry, we were doing, storytelling and poetry, and finding creative expression
Hmm.
for, voicing,
Hmm.
for, breaking the silence around. And one of the things I love about when we break the silence as well is that it gives other people permission. You
Yeah.
know, whenever I talk about my loss in baby loss, people go, "Oh, that happened to me," or "That happened to my mum," or that, it comes out. It gives people permission
Hmm.
to share that part of themselves and that part of their lives. And I just think that's so needed. So tell us about your book. Tell us about, what people get from reading your book, what's in it and how can it help?
Yeah. Love it. I love your energy and your smile. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Um, so I had this I had an idea of a book for a couple of years. So I broke my silence about 4 years ago, and I had the idea of the book for some time, and I sat on the book, and I think I sat on it because I was under the impression of like, who's Perry Power? Who's this guy wanting to write a book? I was like, who's gonna read that? Right. So it's a bit of like self-doubt. And then I pushed through that. And then I left my old business, and it was in the first lockdown last year. I just written a film script, so I've got two feature film scripts. First one I'm waiting for funding. The second one is just a beautiful raw story which doesn't need funding, which is why I wrote it. So which I'm going to be starting very soon. Cross fingers with lockdown and everything. And then I sat there and I was going to watch a film on Netflix. And I don't know if you can relate to this, but like it's so annoying being an actor because it's like I can't. It's like I watch movies where somebody's sitting next to me, they can watch the movie and they're just mesmerized. Me, I'm like, okay, that's a brilliant characterization that he's done. Okay, interesting why he's walked that way. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm like analyzing.
That's an interesting shot. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love
I like the
literally,
lighting on that.
literally so many times with my housemates, we're watching something, and I'm like, oh, I love the shot, I love the colors, and they're just
Yeah,
looking
yeah.
about. You know what I mean? And that I was gonna watch a movie, and then Jeffrey Epstein's documentary was like brand new on Netflix, and I
Uh-huh.
knew about Jeffrey Epstein, and I was like, okay, and I was like, right, I'll watch the first episode, and then that first episode I think turned into 4 episodes that evening, as it usually does when you're starting a brand new TV show,
Yeah.
and I was crying because these girls, Jeffrey Epstein would have his accomplice, his little Robin to his Batman, Ghislaine Maxwell, who would go out and recruit these girls to come to his house, and they would massage him, and then boom, they're under his spell. They're locked in. They abuse. He's abusing them. He's paying them prostitution, everything, but all against their will, right? They
Uh-huh.
don't feel like they can have a choice because if you have this man over you who's a billionaire and he's connected to presidents, to actors, to everything,
Uh-huh.
famous people, you're just, I don't know, Katie who lives down the road who nobody really knows.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And I was seeing these girls telling their story, and I was just like, "Phew, I know how you feel because as a 10-year-old, my granddad as a 10-year-old might as well been a billionaire who was connected because he's my granddad and I'm 10.
Yeah.
Who's gonna believe a 10-year-old against a granddad?
Yeah.
Like, and he's my granddad. It's like, so what, he's not doing anything wrong because why would he? And I was at that age, we're talking 16, nearly 17 years ago. Sexual abuse wasn't a big thing on the news. It wasn't talked about. 17 years ago, like, you know what I mean? It wasn't a big thing. So
Yeah.
I didn't even know what sexual abuse was at that age. So I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
But then when I watched this, I was like, right, I need to write this book. 3 weeks later, I wrote the book. So that was last year, and then the book came out. Um, it's crazy because I had the reason why I sat in this book for nearly a year after I wrote it is because I had this vision, right, where I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted it to be with a publishing company. I wanted it to be in Waterstones and in bookstores.
Yeah.
And the thought of like self-publishing, I was like, oh, but it's not going to get anywhere, right? Because it's just me. And so I sat on it and I needed like $5,000. And I left my old business behind and the savings that I had money, but it was savings to make sure I was paying rent, that I was eating food, not to
Yeah.
spend $5,000 on a book coach, on editor, on cover design. It just wasn't feasible. And the months ticked on, right? The months ticked on. And then I'd moved to this new location. So I moved out of London, moved to Guildford. And I'm sitting here and I literally, my mentor said to me, he goes, dude, what made you just be like, get this book out now? What made you do that? And I was like, I need to really think about it because I don't know. I remember sitting on my bed and it's like, and it's just, I don't know. Maybe sometimes it doesn't have to be a reason, but it was just Perry, get this book out, get it onto Amazon, self-publish the damn book, right?
Uh-huh.
Self-publish it. You're a big believer in the universe. Maybe the universe just wants you to put this book out. And now I've self-published it, and nearly a half a thousand in 2 weeks. Nearly half a thousand copies have sold.
Wow.
MBS, Fox, CBS, The Sun, the publications are coming through like in crazy amounts. And the feedback that I'm now getting, which is what I was waiting for, people who've actually read the book and like, Perry,
Yes.
this is what's happened, and it's just it's been crazy. So, in response to your question, what is the book about? The book is about breaking the silence, right? And it's in 3 parts. The first part is my story, the sexual abuse that happened to me, and me breaking my silence. Part two is stories from 14 other survivors of sexual abuse. Half of them, the first half, they all unnamed. They're like, yeah, Perry, I'm happy to put my name with it. The second half, Perry, I don't want my name attached to this. I don't want, because some of them is going on, it's in the present,
Mhm.
right? So they don't want the name attached. So it's like unnamed 1, unnamed 2, unnamed 3, up until unnamed 8. And then part 3 is how somebody who has been sexually abused or are being sexually abused, how they can break their silence. So how they can find self-love, how they can own their story, how they can find forgiveness. For the men, I talk about masculinity and combating that, those expectations that we set upon ourselves as men, and this society that we believe that we're living in, for us to be this man, right? Which is what is forcing us to stay in silence.
Wow.
You know, and then I talk about the ways that we can break our silence. And also what's really cool about this book, for people who are listening, you won't be able to see this, but I know there's going to be some people that be watching it. Like, here's the book here.
Yeah.
And in the third part, I have paid, so at the end of every chapter, so that we got like in part 3, like I mentioned just then, we have owning your story is one chapter, forgiveness, letting go, masculinity, self-love, shifting your identity, and ways to break your silence. At the end of each chapter, I have a dedicated page that has exercises and questions. So you write in the book, right? You write in the book your your answers to this question. So not only is it like a self-help book, but it's a workbook. And at the end of section 2, when you read in everybody's stories, there's a page in there called Your Story. And when it's time, you write your story in the book so that you become number 15 of the survivors of sexual abuse. And you become that 15th person inside the book.
I love that. I love that. It's like, I'm in a book. You know,
Yeah,
you write a story in the book. I love that.
Yeah.
I like, you know, I love journaling. I'm really into journaling, and it's such a great way of getting your voice out and getting your thoughts out. And yeah.
And that's exactly what I wanted. I journal too, and that's exactly what I wanted to bring into the book.
Brilliant. I love that. Yeah. Oh, well, you know, I'm looking forward to getting a copy of your book for myself, because I haven't done that yet. So I definitely need to get a copy of the book as well. And, you know, this podcast is quite new. I know I've got a few people have been following me for a while through the parenting work that I do. And I think this is massive as well, in terms of, you know, us healing from our pasts and breaking the silence and breaking that legacy. You know, this, in fact, I've got this book right here, which I'm going to show as well. This is The Awakened Woman by Dr. Terreri Trent. She has a brilliant book. She really inspired me. And it's probably partly why I'm doing this podcast, actually. And how Legacy Life came about is because, you know, she created a new legacy for herself, for her children, and has broken the chain in her family and probably in her community, given women another way, you know, something else that they can be. She's from a village in Africa, and when women weren't getting an education, so she got herself an education. She talks about having a baton that's passed on from generation to generation, and that image, I think that really inspired me to think about, well, what is the baton I want to pass down, and what is the baton I don't want to pass down anymore? Like, I don't want to pass down a baton of neglect, of abuse, of, you know, those things that I know my parents experienced. You know, I know my parents had, you know, difficult childhoods, or things happen in their childhoods. And, you know, for me, it was, and what I feel as well, and what I see, is every generation gets better. Every generation improves, right? And it's because it sounds like your dad had a difficult time, right? And he clearly was suffering from the trauma, but it sounds like he didn't pass that on to you. He didn't abuse you, right?
No, he didn't.
Exactly. So, you know, he went some way to stopping that cycle. and I don't know if he knew what was happening to you. So, you know, he might have had some regrets or some trauma around not being able to protect you, right?
That's it. That's it. Like so he was actually myself, my cousin. She's the first person in the book who shares her story. My auntie, her mum, my dad's sister, and my dad. So there's four of us that we know of that were
Wow.
abused by my granddad.
Right.
And it's because of that silence. Nobody spoke up, right? Except
Yeah.
for my cousin, and they ended up getting to a point. My cousin was abused the longest. They ended up getting to a point where my cousin told her mum, and my cousin and my auntie went down to my nan's house, and my auntie spoke to her mum, my nan, and they told her, and my nan outrightly refused it and said that my cousin was lying, and this is her, what would it be, her granddaughter, her granddaughter, and
Yeah.
basically said that she was doing it to get attention, right? And they couldn't believe that. Now, what we believe to be true, and everyone collectively has the same thought and the same assumption, is that my granddad was a master manipulator,
Mm-hmm.
and my nan was very dependent on him.
Mm-hmm.
So if she was to bring herself to agree and accept that that was the reality,
Mm-hmm.
and she stayed with him, that means that she's staying with it with for what she knows is somebody that sexually abuses her family. And I think she couldn't do that, so she would have to leave him. But she didn't want to leave him. So it was that scarcity of being alone, was the scarcity of confronting that to be the truth. So
Mm-hmm.
instead, what she thought would be easier to do was to deny that and stay with the man and drink more. They were alcoholics, right?
Right.
So
Okay.
that was passed down to my dad. It's passed down to
Mm-hmm.
my auntie now.
Yeah.
She drinks a lot. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, but I talk about this in the book a lot, and I say this wherever I go. What I found out, right, the actual story. Like, I talk a lot in the book about forgiveness, a
Mm-hmm.
lot about forgiveness,
Yeah.
and I also do say that I'm not telling you to forgive the abuser, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying that's something you have to do because everyone's situation is different. However, what I will say from my experience, I chose to forgive my granddad. Now, the reason why I did that is because he died 2 years after the last sexual abuse. So I was 12, 13. He died from a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been dead for many years, but he still had a hold of me. He still had
Mm-hmm.
a hold on the story,
Yeah.
right? He
Yeah.
still had power over me because I wasn't forgiving him. If I ever look back on the story or see a picture of him, I have hate, right? Because of what he done. I hadn't forgiven him.
Yeah.
So I was like, right, I want to forgive that man for what he done. But how can I do that? Well, I believe that you do that through understanding, right? Through a level of awareness. So I was like, okay, let me try and understand his story because unless I'm proven wrong, and I'm happy to be proven wrong, I don't believe somebody's born wanting to abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's born, you know, nobody's born racist. Nobody's born
Mm-hmm.
liking kids. Like it's not it's through society, it's through conditioning, it's through um not healing, it's through wounds that are open, it's through how you're coping, right? And that is how you're projecting it. And I found out that my granddad, who's Irish, was raised in the Catholic Church with his brother.
Right.
And I don't know if you've ever seen the film Spotlight.
I haven't. No,
Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I don't. So
Okay, so it's crazy how, I mean, it won so many Golden Globes. It won Best Picture, and it's about a team of journalists, not news report, journalists in Boston in, I can't remember what year. It might be like the 60s or the 70s, and they got whiff of a case of a priest molesting a kid, but nobody wanted to touch that case, right?
yeah.
Because we're talking about a holy man here. We're talking about a priest.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big thing. And there was this woman who was like, and this is all a true story. There's a woman who's like, no, I don't care who he is. I'm gonna dive into the story. She built out a team. They dive into the story. It's not one priest molesting a child. It's priests. It's this underground ring of priests all over the world
Yeah.
molesting kids in their churches, in their schools. And at the end of the film, before the credits, like every film, they brought up a series of schools, institutions, churches around the world that have had documented cases of priests molesting the kids,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they put it in the film. And I remember my dad telling me when it came out, about a year before he passed, that the school that the boarding school that my granddad grew up in was listed in that film.
Yeah.
right? And so he was raised being molested, being raped by priests, him and his brother,
Mhm.
right, in this school. And he stayed in silence when he came out of that school. He never sought help, right? He denied that anything happened. And how did he deal with it? By, unfortunately, inflicting that pain that was once inflicted onto him onto other people. And I know
Yeah.
that's the case for a lot of abusers. And once I found out about that story, I came to a level of understanding. Not that I agree. I'm not giving him a get out of jail free card. I don't excuse him for what he done. I'm not like, oh, it's all right, mate. No, but I understand. Okay, that's why he done it, and that allowed me to find a place of forgiveness. Like if he was alive today, I would sit down with him. I would probably put his story in my book, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
to to um to help people, try to help people come to a level of understanding that forgiveness might be the key that you need to be
Mm,
able to move forward if you haven't tried to do so already. It's the hardest thing to do, but
yeah.
that's why it's the most rewarding if you can do it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it does transform your life and transform relationships, you know. Um,
But yeah, if you can forgive the, in your eyes, the biggest villain in the world, then whatever happens to you after that, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like you,
It-
you won't let anybody get you down, or of that nature, because
yeah.
you've done the impossible already.
And you know, there are some amazing examples, aren't there, of people who have forgiven. Um, and it's because
Nelson
the
Mandela.
thing is, it keeps us prisoner, you know, when we don't forgive someone else,
Yeah.
it keeps us prisoner, you
Mm.
know. And yeah, it's not always easy to do.
Well, no, like I speak about it in my book. I say Nelson Mandela. So like my mum's side of the family, they're all South African, right? So I know a lot about the apartheid and everything that happened there. And look at Nelson Mandela, right?
Yeah.
He went to prison, right? And in it he had every right to come out of prison and give a big fu to the white population and be like, screw you guys, I'm going to get an army and I'm going to kill every single one of you, right? Or something of that nature. Like if he wanted to, we couldn't blame him because he was in prison for God knows how long, a bloody lifetime, right?
Yeah.
But what
Yeah.
did he do? He came out and he forgave the white population, and he created peace, and that's why he won, um was it a Nobel Peace Prize and everything for
Yeah.
his example on forgiveness. And I'm like, if you can forgive people who have tortured, who have imprisoned you, and you can forgive them,
Mm,
what does that say? It tells you that forgiveness is a path that you should be taking. Because if he never, here's the thing, if he came out and he never forgave his captures and he never forgave any of that part of his story, he would have continued to live in hate, in shame, in fear, in paranoia, in anxiety,
mm.
and none of that's good. So he never forgave them for them though. He forgave them for himself so he can move forward and for the people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And it's a gift on both sides, actually, isn't it?
Yeah,
It is a gift on both sides.
yeah.
Um, wow. So yeah, it's it's so great to speak to you about this and to have. I'm so honored to have you as part of this podcast and your story, your amazing book. I just think it's great, and I'd encourage anybody to use that. It sounds like it's really practical as well, so it's going to open things up and create a path to transformation, a path to moving on.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if I said here, but I know before we got onto the podcast, we were talking about um, what's behind my kind of mission in terms of what I'm doing, which is this sense of balance, this sense of creating a world where masculine and feminine qualities are equally valued.
Yeah.
And I think these experiences that you're sharing um, can bring into question our femininity, our masculinity, whether it's safe to be all of who we are, you know.
Mm-hmm.
um, and Yeah, and I think, you know, creating a world where we're free to be wholly who we are is so important, because I think I do feel that when we're not able to be fully ourselves, I have my step brother who is he was kind of in the closet for many years, and it's just like you need to be able to be who you are,
Yeah,
you
I
know.
know, I know. It's crazy. I know somebody, a friend of mine, he's gay, and one member of his family knows.
Mhm.
20s now, he's still like that. He does come from a family, um, from a strict Pakistani family,
Okay.
where is not. So I can't be like, oh, I could put myself in your shoes and understand. I don't come from a Pakistani family. I don't come from a family with very strict rules, you
Mhm.
know. And so I went for a second to try to um, understand how he's feeling, but it's just it's just like I watch one of my favorite TV shows is Queer Eye. I don't know if anybody's seen it. Queer Eye is bloody brilliant.
Is it? I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's Queer Eye is about these how many? I think it's five. Yeah, five of them. So it's five. They're all gay guys from America, except for one of them. He's from Nottingham, and they all have their own role, right? So one of them, he's like a mindset guy. The other one, he's a fashion designer. The other one is an interior designer. The other one's a chef. And basically, what they do is they get pitched, right? So there'll be, if there's a member of your family and I don't know, he's a slob and like he doesn't go on dates, he lives in the mess of a house, doesn't look after himself, he's quite negative.
Mhm.
His family would like put him forward to the show, and then the five guys would go out to this guy and they'll completely turn his life upside down, right? Like it's one of those ones.
Yeah,
But what you'll
it's like
find is,
a makeover show for your life.
yeah, yeah, it's literally it. And these I legit nearly every episode I cried. I watched it. We watched an episode 2 days ago, and I cried 4 times in that one episode. Right, I'm such an emotional guy. I'm very emotional, and they talk quite often because it's triggers, and sometimes when these guys are doing something in their stories, and how they know what it's like to again live in silence, not from abuse, or maybe you could say it's a form of abuse from the people that they're um, connected with, but they've been living in silence because they're gay and they don't want to be shunned from the world. And it makes me so emotional that that is still a thing. Like,
Mm.
why is that a thing? Why can somebody who's gay, why is that even a thing? Like, why you don't hear people saying like, oh, he's straight? Like, that's that's that's
Yeah,
not that doesn't come out your mouth. That you
yeah,
don't feel like you need to be, oh, he's straight. So why is it a thing that somebody's gay? Like, it doesn't it really annoys me. And the fact that some people will live their entire life hiding their husband or their boyfriend from their family, from their friends, it makes me very, I don't know, it shouldn't be a thing. But
yeah.
but at the same time, it is very slowly starting to go in that direction of it not being a thing. More people are talking, more people are opening up, you
Mm.
know, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And is again another layer of breaking the silence, isn't it? And
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly, which is why the big vision of this is I don't want it to just be like I see what I do in the future having um events kind of like Tony Robbin events, right? But
Mhm.
for breaking the silence and people coming and I really see that. And I see it not just for sexual abuse, I see it for people who are just living in silence, whether they're living in silence because they're secretly gay, whether they're living in silence because I don't know, anything that is causing them to be living in silence, because I think everybody who's living in silence can all relate. I've had a few people who've never been sexually abused in their life, but they brought this book and they said that it's changed their life
Mhm.
because of the whole concept of breaking the silence. And for the third part of the book, they're like, it's transferable skills to where I'm
Yeah.
at in my life.
And
You know?
that's it, isn't it? You know, and this is the thing with you know, this legacy life thing that I'm doing as well. It's that thing of it transfers to every part of your life. You know, if I'm working with parents or if I'm working with people on their business, it's all the same stuff. When you have a breakthrough in one area of your life, it ripples out into them all, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it's often this exactly the same skills, You know, if you're forgiving, right? You're forgiving yourself, you're forgiving the other person, whether that's from, you know, the trauma that you've had, or the whatever it is. You know, it's that you know, for me, I suppose my transformation with forgiveness was with my dad. He wasn't around when I grew up, and it was when I realized, there's a distinction between somebody's actions and what we make it mean. That was huge for me. So what I'd made him not being there, or him not sending me birthday cards and things like this, his lack of action in a way,
Yeah.
I'd made it mean he didn't love me. And when I realized, oh, those are two different things, boom, that was huge. That was like an awakening for me. And I was able to forgive and create a relationship.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, that forgiveness part is huge, isn't it? And the transformation rippling out to different areas.
Yeah. It's I growing up, my dad used to cotton wool me, right? And he used to put me in his bubble. Like, if I wanted to leave the house, where are you going? I'm going here. Okay, what time are you getting there for? This time. What time? This time. This is the time I want you back. What's the address? What's their numbers? It was very, very suffocating growing up, which is why as soon as I was 18, I went to uni to get away from home, right? And when I left uni, I went traveling, right? And I haven't lived with my family since the age of 18. Which is, you know, I have friends, I mean, not anymore, but like who were living at home to the 23, 24, 25. And I'm like, absolutely not, right? so, so when I was 18, I left home, and I've been an independent, living out my own place since the age of 18. And like, I've been living on my own, like my own house, for like 6 years. And this is the first time I've been living here for a month now, where I've moved into somewhere with his housemates, because it got to a point, I'm like, I've been living on my own for so many years, right? And there's elements of it that is fab, great, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know what it's like to live with housemates. I was like, I really just want to itch that scratch and just see what it's like. And I've been living here for a month, and I don't know, it's bloody brilliant. It's just, but then it does depend on who you're living with. I know
Yeah,
that much.
absolutely. It depends on who you live.
I've hit the jackpot. I won't lie.
Well, I'm glad you've hit the jackpot, because it does depend on who you're living with, sure.
I know.
But, and in this situation where we're, you know, in this pandemic,
it helps.
You know, oh gosh, having community around you, having people around you, especially, you know, I have a family, so I have a husband and I have 2 children, you know, so I have other people around me. I think I would have really struggled being on my own.
I really struggled during the first lockdown.
Yeah.
No, I really did. And with here's the thing: if you've read Gary Chapman's book, Love Languages, 5 Love Languages.
Yes. Oh yeah. I use it in my work all the time.
That, and I know the same for many people, completely changed my life. Like, I cannot wait. I mean, I read that book after I split with my ex. When I split with my ex, I became just like fascinated. It's like, okay, when I get into a new relationship, how can I be the best partner? And I was reading, and I read was it Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? The Love Languages, and I'm just being like really just trying to gain an understanding to be the best partner. And then I realized how the love languages isn't just you with your missus or with your husband. It's the love language between friends, between family, between work colleagues. And that made me realize, growing up, my dad was like that towards me, because that was a love that he never experienced growing up from his parents. He wanted to be loved in a certain way. So, like, for example, me growing up, I never felt that love for my dad because it was just suffocating, right?
He was speaking a different language, right?
He was speaking a language. Yeah, he was providing a love to me because that's how he wanted it. Yeah, he was speaking the wrong language. Whereas to me, giving me freedom, complete freedom to make my own mistakes, is how I want to be loved, because it means that you trust me.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And when I realized just the language of love was just different. He was speaking to me Chinese, where I only understood English, right? Yeah. It made me truly understand. And then boom. And when I realized that, the world of parenting was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Head before that.
Absolutely. And that's what I do with people. So, you know, I do a lot of work around parenting, and I use the love languages and the how to talk so kids will listen skills, and lots of different skills that I've gathered along the way. But the love languages is huge. Yeah, a huge part of what I do with parents, because understanding what you need to feel loved and understanding what your children, your partner need to feel loved is huge. And something that's come out of the work I've been doing, I'm working with a group at the moment, and we spent a couple of weeks on the love languages. And one of the things that came out is during this pandemic, like, the opportunities for our needs to be met by people outside our family have disappeared. So suddenly, where normally some of our need for love, for connection, like my sister loves dancing, for instance, she gets her need for physical touch partly met by going dancing, right? She does blues dancing, she does sarok, you're in contact with other human beings, and you're sharing an energetic moment when you dance with them, right?
Yeah.
With all of that gone, suddenly you've only got the people you're in direct contact with to meet all of your needs. And that's challenging for parents. You know, we haven't got extended family either, who may have been meeting, you know, needs and speaking a language for our children that is more difficult for us.
Yeah.
You know, all of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I feel we should wrap up this, but it's been incredible to talk with you. I absolutely love what you're doing. I love your message and the synergy of how this has come about as well, this conversation today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
So can you just let people know where they can connect with you?
Sure. Yeah. So best place is either Facebook or Instagram. I'm definitely more responding to people on Instagram. So my handle is at I am Perry Power. You can find my book on Amazon, any Amazon, whatever country you're in, is on there for Breaking the Silence, stories from survivors of sexual abuse. And then the other one is our charity, WeRescueKids.org. Our campaign launched yesterday, which has been in the work for a while, and it's where you can sponsor a child. And if you sponsor a child, then you're basically giving them, for your sponsorship, therapy for a whole year with a certified child therapist. And they'll be getting, whether it's weekly or bi-weekly, whatever the therapist deems as necessary for that individual child. Mm-hmm. And you'll be getting communication for how the child is responding to therapy, overcoming the traumas from the sexual abuse and their story, owning their story and healing and what have you, all through that sponsorship. So that launched yesterday. So feel free to check it out. Which is so amazing. So amazing to be like, I don't know, 2 years ago, I didn't have a book, I didn't have a charity, I was just floating through. And then somebody rightly said, is that, Perry, you've been in entrepreneurship for 7 years now, and you've been just never giving up. You're just pushing through, believing that the universe, this is the thing, it's faith. And I now understand why religion is such a big thing.
Yes.
The faith in the higher power, the faith that they have in God. And whilst I think if I was an American, I probably would believe in God, because a lot of it is in alignment. Not everything, but a lot of it is in alignment. And it's just believing that the universe is making me push through these struggles of entrepreneurship for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are.
It is that faith. It's having that faith, and however you can get to that, you know, if you believe in God, if you believe in the universe, if you believe in Allah or whatever, it doesn't really, I don't really care what people believe in, but that they believe, that they have the faith, that they have that connection, because it makes a difference. And that's how we came to be here together today. That, you know, I had an idea. I said I wanted to interview people who have a story to tell, who have a legacy that they want to leave with the world. And here you are, you know, and then you just popped up in my Facebook feed, and I went, ooh, Perry Power, definitely, let's have a conversation.
If you went onto Facebook 5 minutes later, you might not have seen that post.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
So it's just, everything happens like that for a reason. And that's why we're here.
Yeah. And connecting it back, just to finish off, to breaking the silence, right? When we speak what we want to become, when we share our message, when we share our desires, when we share what it is we're wanting to create, without knowing how we're going to do it, without knowing what the steps are, the people, the resources, everything comes.
Yeah.
You know, when we hold that faith and just focus on what is it that I really want? What is it? What is the message? What is the mission? What is my vision?
Yeah.
And it all comes, and that is so exciting.
You become this magnet.
Yes.
For, and here's the thing, right? It's like this is the last thing, I promise.
We will stop, honestly, everyone. We will. We can talk all day through.
Is you and I first realized this from a relationship. So me and my ex broke up some time ago, and I remember after the breakup, I wanted her back, right? And I wanted this relationship back.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember following somebody on Instagram, and he released this video about you don't, when you're coming from this place of want, you're operating from this place of resistance, and the universe doesn't give you what you're resisting because you're resisting it, because you're wanting it, right? Rather be, and if you are just are, the universe will give you what you already are, right? So when I stop wanting a relationship, when I'm stop wanting to try and find that person, what's going to happen? The person will come, right?
Yeah.
And with wanting this message, wanting to like find something to live life through, i.e. a message and a movement, I was resisting it because I was trying to force puzzle pieces in to slots that where it didn't fit. And then the book was just came to me, and then the charity just sort of, the idea just came to me. And is because I was coming from this place of just being. I was being my message. I was waking up, okay, I'm being my message today for breaking the silence. And then boom, the journalist, the publicist came to me because I'm already being, I'm attracting it.
Yeah.
Before, all throughout business, where I wanted that journalist, I was resisting it. They weren't seeing my messages. The price was too high. I had to go through somebody else to get to them. But now they're coming to me because I'm just open, and it's just.
Well, that's it. It's surrendering. It's surrendering to what is that thing for you? What is it that you came here to do?
Yeah.
Right? You had a message, and you know what I think as well is if we're going to go through some awful shit in life, right? Some horrible things happen. There is always some good that can come from that. I believe that there's always some good. And look at what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's really it's like some making lemonade out of lemons on steroids, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It is like, if we're going to experience these hardships, the contrast, you know, there's bad, there's good, there's light, there's dark, there's you know, the hard things, and there's the joy. And we, you know, life is that contrast. And if we're going to go through the really hard things, well, what good can come out of it? What is the opposite? What is the contrast?
Yeah.
And this movement, this breaking the silence, that is the contrast. That is the good that can come out of. Because, you know, the thought that all those people in your family suffered what they've suffered, including your granddad, you know, and all that suffering that's happened, let there be some good that comes from that, you know, and there is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I appreciate you, Sarah. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much.